Hello, and welcome to the Feeling Good podcast, where you can learn powerful techniques to change the way you feel. I am your host, Rhonda, and joining me here in the Murrieta studio is Dr. David Burns. Dr. David Burns is a pioneer in the development of cognitive behavioral therapy and the creator of the new teen therapy. He is the author of Feeling Good, which has sold over 5 million copies in the United States and has been translated into over 30 languages. David is currently an emeritus adjunct professor of clinical psychiatry at Stanford University School of Medicine. Hi, David.
Hello, Rhonda.
I said it first. So, listeners, this is episode 182, and welcome to this podcast. This is an Ask David where we're going to ask some pretty interesting questions that people have sent to you via email.
And we're going to try to do a little catch-up rather than doing a full podcast on one question. We're going to see if we can get in 3 questions more quickly, because I've got quite a backlog of questions, and they're all really terrific. 2 of the ones we're going to address have to do with relationships and what is the most common cause of relationship conflict. So hope you'll enjoy them.
Yes.
Before we go into it, I just want to say that I have some new workshops that have been scheduled kind of last minute, to just in case you're interested. On Saturday, March 21st and Sunday, March 22nd, I'll be in Washington, D.C. For the Psychotherapy Networker Conference. And the reason I'm going is because Pesci, who's publishing my new book, and Psychotherapy Networker have merged. It's the same company now.
Oh, wow.
And they're going to unveil the new book.
Oh, wow, how exciting.
Yeah, and they're going to have 9-foot banners with my picture and the cover of the book and stuff.
Oh, how cool.
Yeah, it's really cool. In fact, I'll put a link on in the notes so people can see the cover of the new book. And so the Saturday workshop will be a 4-hour one on feeling great, a new high-speed treatment for depression. And I'll be talking about how to melt away therapeutic resistance, and also giving the people in the audience a personal experience with externalization of voices, and show videos from the Karen session.
Nice.
It would be pretty awesome, I think, hopefully.
Yeah.
And then on Sunday, it's going to be on magical thinking and anxiety disorders, and I'm going to feature the 6-minute panic attack cure.
Great.
Probably with video.
Great.
The 2-minute cure for severe refractory OCD, the single session social anxiety cure, that fellow with the fear of sweating, and a 2-minute cure of an elevator phobia. A woman who did 20 years of psychoanalysis failed for her elevator phobia, and some other super dramatic high-speed recoveries, and it'll be on the therapist's fear of using exposure.
That's awesome.
So that should be fun. And that'll be, and then also on March 20th, I don't think you can go to this one, but I'm going to give my Google talk on feeling great. You can change the way you feel. It'll also be about, it'll be from Feeling Good, my first book, to Feeling Great, the new book. And I think that'll be an exciting one too. It'll be 45-minute talk for the general public plus 15 minutes of Q&A. I'll present it here locally at Google, but they're going to video it, and then it'll be on the internet, YouTube, and stuff like that.
Oh, great.
And then in May 17th, the Cognitive Distortion Starter Kit, and we're going to be starting some podcasts on that same topic too. What are the best distortions for each? The best techniques for each of the 10 distortions. And that'll be, again, a 1-day locally on May 17th in Palo Alto, or you can join from anywhere in the world online. And I would say that our last one, February 9th with Jill, was a tremendous experience, and I think this one will be really exciting too. And then there will be the South San Francisco Summer Intensive, and it's going to be all about the 5 secrets this year from August 10th to 13th. And then in December, I'll be at the Evolution of Psychotherapy Conference, and we're excited to be featuring Jeffrey Zeig on a podcast that we'll probably be recording next week, and it'll probably be posted in 2, 3, 4, 5 weeks. And he'll talk about his awesome conference. It's the greatest event in the world in psychotherapy. There are thousands of people come. It'll be in Anaheim. I'll be there. A lot of the big names in therapy will be there. So it's a pretty exciting event. You can get info and registration for all of these on my website, feelinggood.com. Now let us dive in.
Okay, doke. I'll read the first one. Dear Dr. Burns, thank you so much for taking the time to create your podcast. I have been reading about neuroplasticity in relation to brain injuries, rehab, chronic pain, and addiction. So
just for our viewers, neuroplasticity means the brain's ability to be plastic, in other words, to change rapidly to create new circuits. We used to think of the brain as some fixed thing that was fixed by about the time you were 14 years old or something, but the brain is constantly changing.
Okay. So neuroplasticity in relation to brain injuries, rehab, chronic pain, and addiction. So episode 167 on team therapy being neurosurgery, that featured Mark Noble, really blew my mind in a good way.
And again, Mark Noble has a chapter in my new book, Feeling Great, and he's a wonderful guy, neuroscientist from Rochester, and his chapter will feature how, if you had to create a therapy that was suited to how the brain actually works, you would create team CBT, and he thinks of it as microneurosurgery. We activate the specific circuits in the brain that carry the negativity, the depression, the anxiety, the anger or whatever, and then we selectively modify those circuits through a variety of techniques and exercises. And that's what Mark calls microneurosurgery.
Great. So she continues, I do have one question about terms I've heard on the podcast. The terms that confuse me are negative distortions and positive distortions. I think I understand that they are both, and she has this in quotes, bad distortions, but the positive distortions are distortions related to moods or thoughts that are unhealthily high or up, such as mania or narcissism. And are the negative distortions related to the lower mood states, depression? Is this correct?
That's a great question. We had a podcast on negative and positive distortions before you joined one of our first podcasts, probably number 3 or 4, when we started the podcasts. And a lot of people aren't aware that there's 2 lists of distortions. They have pretty much the same names. It's the 10 cognitive distortions in my book, Feeling Good, but we've emphasized usually the negative ones, like overgeneralization, where you tell yourself, I'm a loser because I screwed up at some specific thing, or I'm unlovable because some person doesn't love me or rejected me, and how changing those distortions can eliminate depression and anxiety really rapidly, especially in the context of the new team therapy, where we have motivational techniques as well as cognitive techniques. But to be very clear, it isn't true that all negative thoughts are bad. Only distorted negative thoughts are unhealthy. For example, if you're in a dangerous area, you tell yourself, gosh, I could get killed here. And that's true. Then that's not a distortion, and the fear you feel would keep you alive. And if a loved one dies and you feel sadness and you have thoughts, I loved her, I loved him, and I'll really miss him, and you feel sad and you grieve, that's a healthy feeling. That's not depression. But depression always results from distorted negative thoughts with all or nothing thinking and should statements and blame and mind reading and all of that. Now, there's also 2 kinds of positive thoughts, healthy positive thoughts and distorted positive thoughts. And healthy positive thoughts, bring joy. Like seeing you makes me feel happy because, it's fun to work together, and we've had wonderful responses to our podcasts, and, so that's great. But positive distortions are for all 10 negative distortions, there's 10 mirror image positive distortions. There's positive all or nothing thinking. For example, there's positive overgeneralizations. There's positive mind reading. That's where you think people are thinking highly of you when they're really not. And positive all or nothing thinking would be Like when people recover from depression, they sometimes go to the all of all or nothing and say, "Oh, I'm wonderful after all. I'll be happy forever."
Mm.
But that's not true. That's a distortion. But if you believe that, then when you relapse, you go into the nothing of all or nothing. Oh, I'm a loser after all. The therapy didn't work. So the positive distortions can be as destructive, sometimes more destructive than the negative ones because they lead to mania, they lead to narcissism, they cause violence. Positive
And how do
distortions,
they cause violence?
well, you say to yourself, I'm so much better than these other people, who I call my enemies, and they're the vermin, and I'm the superior race, and so I get to kill them
Mm.
because they're less than human, and I'm a superhuman. I'm better than other
So
people.
you were saying earlier, before we turned the recording on, that positive distortions lead to feelings of superiority,
Yeah,
and they're like overly positive thoughts about yourself that aren't based in reality.
yeah, thoughts that aren't true. Like Hitler told the German people that they're the superior race. That's not true. It's a lie. And he said, Jews and people with mental retardation or mental illnesses are like rats. They're inferior.
Mm.
They need to be killed. And that's not true.
I thought positive distortions were mostly about addictions.
That's
Like
one
like I
area.
deserve this.
Yeah, I deserve the strength. I deserve to eat what I want to eat. I want to get high. It's going to taste so good, and I'm entitled to
Or I'm in
this.
control of this.
Yeah, right. And I'll just take one tiny little bite of this donut.
Right.
Well, how many times have you taken one tiny little bite of a donut? Like
Yeah.
I've never taken one tiny little bite. I've taken a lot of big bites.
I know.
But so positive distortions, you're right. They do cause. They are the root of all addictions, but they're also at the root of mania, violence, narcissism, and one or two other things. And they're really much harder to get rid of because unlike negative distortions, when you say I'm a loser, you feel terrible.
And you want to get rid of that. You want to work
Yeah,
to get rid of that thought.
yeah, that's right. But when you have a positive distortion and you say, "Oh, I'm a winner," I'm better than other people, I'm smarter than other people, you get kind of high and euphoric, and you don't want to let go of it. We see that in the destructive effects of that in society. We see it in politics, for example. You sometimes see people, movie stars or celebrities, who get carried away with themselves and with their narcissism and have a kind of ugly side to them.
Well, how would you compare, I mean, positive distorted statements to statements that like maybe an Olympic athlete would say before they compete, like I can do this, and I'm capable of being a winner, and
Statements like that may actually motivate you and excite you. And there's a kind of argument, I don't know the correct answer to it. Do you need positive distortions to really motivate yourself? Yeah, and you're probably, if you like, when I was doing my research, I started getting into positive distortions because well, in the first place, I was very unprepared to do research because I hadn't taken any biology classes in college, and I was a terrible medical student. And then when I was a resident, I had to do research, and I didn't have anyone really helping me in the lab. But I started reading this research from the National Institute of Mental Health on brain serotonin metabolism and started telling myself, they're screwed up. They don't know what they're doing. I can outdo them. I can do research like this and prove that they're wrong. And it was kind of a positive distortion because I had never published a paper or anything, and this was the chief of the National Institute of Mental Health of preclinical psychopharmacology. I was challenging, but I put a team together and redid their research and proved that they were wrong and won the top award in the world for brain research
wow.
when I was still a psychiatric resident.
So then, was that motivating to you when you
It,
said
it
I can
was.
do this?
It was. And I used to do it, positive distortions clinically too, saying, oh, I can help any patient. And most therapists don't think that, and they shouldn't think that. but I can think that because I can do it. And it used to excite me, but the downside was then when the research wasn't going well, or when a patient was not doing well and was criticizing me, it was such a threat to myself, to my ego, and so life became a roller coaster. And I discovered that when I gave up those positive distortions and decided to listen when patients criticized me and use that as a way to deepen the relationship and give up that manic kind of positive distortion stuff, that life became a lot better for me. And I learned that people like me a lot better when I'm human and flawed, and not trying to impress people. But the positive distortion certainly can have benefits in terms of euphoria and being motivated.
Giving up that positive distortion, like I can treat anyone or I can do the research better than the chief.
Yeah.
When you gave those up, it didn't stop you from being productive.
No, I think I became probably more productive, especially I was in my clinical practice then, but I think I've been 10 times more effective with patients once I gave up those all or nothing thinking and positive distortions and thinking I had to cure everybody. And once, when patients used to tell me, Dr. Burns, you're not helping me, it used to tick me off and threaten me. And I'd argue with them, and I never won those arguments. And then one day, when the patient said that, I said, "You're so right. I haven't been helpful at all, and I feel sad and ashamed. And let's talk about it. You're probably so angry and hurt and hopeless." And suddenly, the patients heard what they wanted to hear, and they opened up. And then I found that I could help people I hadn't been able to help before.
Yeah.
But they're tough because there are a lot of rewards from those positive distortions, and it's kind of based on our culture. You're going to do superior work, and you'll become a superior human being, and we think that there's something fantastic about these celebrities and people who are on another plateau. I don't know if I ever told you, but once when I was at my hospital in Philadelphia, which was a grade B hospital, I had heard that this super famous actor was a big fan of mine, and people say, "Yeah, he gives out your book, Feeling Good by the Hundreds." Oh yeah, tell me another story. And then once I was at my hospital, Presbyterian, which was just an inner city hospital, and there was a page, so and so paging Dr. David Burns, and it was this guy.
Oh.
I couldn't believe it, so I rushed and took the page, and he said that he was a fan of mine, and he wanted to come to Philadelphia, and he had only 2 days, and could I cure him in 2 days? And I said, "Oh, sure, I'll just wipe out all my other patients. I'll give you two full days, and we'll just work back to back." It was my first intensive.
Oh, so you did that?
Yeah, and he came to my office, and he came in a disguise. And I said, "Why are you disguised?" He says, "Well, it doesn't really do me much good, but people, constantly are after me for autographs, and but there was an aura about him, and I felt it. I thought, gosh, these famous people really are special." And it is this hypnotic, kind of like a positive hypnotic trance, and so I worked with him, and he was an actor. We did all role play techniques, and so he was cured in about 2 hours, and we had 17 hours scheduled on 2 consecutive days, and we were done like halfway through the morning of the first day.
Oh,
and then he said, "Well, should we go to lunch together?" Which is kind of an ethics violation.
Right.
I said, "Sure." And so we actually had to sneak through back alleyways because otherwise cars would pull up. And
really?
People would, oh yeah, I mean, like you're on another plane there when you hit that high fame level. And then we went into this real expensive French restaurant, and I just felt, oh God, this is so awesome. I'm with this guy, and people are going to see us. We went in there, everyone said, "Oh, we're going to buy you free drinks. We're going to pay for your lunch." Everyone was just bowing to us like we were a celebrity. He was a celebrity. So there is that thing that our country is kind of in this spell. But to tell you the truth, the most rewarding times of my life have been with Rhonda, with the Sunday hikers, with my cat Obi, with with people who are open and genuine and flawed. But I don't want to put the actor down. He was really a nice
Yeah, but I
nice
think you're making
guy.
a really good point that that feeling of superiority is kind of addicting in and of itself.
Yeah, that's my point. Yeah,
So you
you
don't really
want
want to
that.
get rid of that as much as you want to get rid of a negative thought that's causing you pain.
Yeah, and I know we're going to do our next podcast on racism, but he made an interesting comment to me that he much preferred black people to white people. You know
Was
why?
he black?
No,
Oh,
he was white.
why?
Because he said when white people come up, they're so pushy and demanding, and he says when asking for autographs and stuff like that. He said even the paparazzi they chase him in cars like it's 24 hours a day, every day. But he said when black people come up, they're kind and warm, and they can sense, that I'm kind of like a hunted animal. He said,
Mm, wow.
and I just thought well, it was a beautiful statement.
Hmm.
Our hospital was in an inner city area and multi racial and but I've always felt that way about black people too, that they're sometimes have greater warmth and love and kindness. And I'm sure we're all human, we all have good and bad, but
Yeah.
I've always kind of shared that when someone's been an underdog, they sometimes I think have greater compassion for the suffering of others. I'm
Yeah,
sure I'm
I
way
agree
out
I
on a
think
limb,
that
but
that's true.
I feel that way.
Yeah, I think it's easier to say that about underdogs than about one particular racial group.
Or any group that's
Yeah.
been gay people, anyone who's been singled out for bad treatment by society. So,
Yeah.
sometimes you find great compassion in people with that kind of background, as opposed to people who think they're entitled to everything. Anyway, just my rant.
Okay. Well, so this woman who sent you this email, also said some really positive things that I thought would be fun to read.
Oh, nice.
She said, Dr. Burns, thank you so much for all your hard work on the podcast, as well as your diligence in training therapists in your team model. I am a super fan of the model already, only after 1 week or so of listening to the podcasts. And the 5 secrets have challenged me to examine my communication abilities with more honesty and openness, and helped me in several important interactions already, even as a novice making many mistakes. Please also tell Fabrice and Rhonda many thanks for all of their hard work and excellence as well. They both bring such gifts and refreshing honesty, brilliance, and genuineness to the discussions. I especially admire Rhonda for sharing her personal work. Such powerful and transformative stuff. It gives me hope that someday I might be a fraction as brave to do that kind of work, much less share it openly with others for their benefit. For now, I will continue to tell everyone, including quite a few other counselor friends, about the podcast and the team model. Sincerely, a super fan podcast listener, Holly. But hopefully she's going to think that too about the recent podcast we did where Sarah did awesome work last
Oh
week.
yeah,
Yeah.
well that's praise is so well deserved for you, Rhonda. I feel
Yeah.
the same way, and I know all of our fans do too. You bring brightness, you bring warmth, you bring humility, you bring curiosity, and mediocrity to the
Yeah, and averageness. And flubby. Somebody emailed me and said, "Hey, I like that podcast you did on 5 Secrets because you made so many mistakes. You made it
Exactly.
you made
Yeah.
it real."
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
That's right. When we screw up, we give people a gift.
Yep. So here's another Ask David. And it's all, can you use the 5 secrets for someone in a hypomanic state? Won't agreeing with their accusations just make things worse? Hi, David and Rhonda. Thank you so much for the podcast. I've been an avid listener since the early days of the podcast, and it's helped me through very difficult times and still does. My question is related to my relationship with my future ex-wife. She is at times in a hypomania state due to her bipolar illness, which is diagnosed and treated. Is it possible to use the 5 secrets of effective communication with someone who's in a state of hypomania? I feel that agreeing with unreasonable accusations and complaints is not helping at all and only causes her to hold to these claims. Thanks, Al.
Okay, before we read his next letter, I then wrote back to him. This is one of my favorite questions because I love relationship issues and how you can often make such inroads by using the 5 secrets, but also the 5 secrets are hard. But I always tell people, you asked a general question, and I don't want to be impolite. If I was impolite, I'd say general questions about the 5 secrets in relationships are a total waste of time. They never did anyone any good. They never will do anyone any good. All the devil's in the details, the specificity. Name one thing your wife said to you and exactly what you said next. Then we can see how you could use the 5 secrets and disarming. The general answer to that question is that the disarming technique and the 5 secrets were designed specifically to help you agree with criticisms that appear to be irrational and unfair. And when I was first learning the 5 secrets, I spent 2 months working on the disarming technique. How would I agree with this? How would I agree with that? Making up imaginary criticisms of myself that couldn't be true, and then learning how to agree with them. But I don't have one set of communications for someone with a mental diagnosis like bipolar or schizophrenia, and another one for somebody without. I use the same 5 secrets for everyone I interact with. But I predict what we're going to hear, or what we've heard from him already, is my wife is to blame.
Yes.
You see, her criticisms are irrational. She's got bipolar, and that is the cause of all marital conflict. Not that she is to blame. The problem is that he's blaming her. Let's read on and see how the story unfolds.
Do you think you could briefly describe for people who don't know what hypomania is?
Well, yeah, I mean, this is just kind of like jargon, but there's 2 forms of bipolar manic depressive illness, and the terms are abused and thrown around a lot, not very precisely, but full-blown bipolar is a psychotic state where a person goes from normal functioning. They quickly go into mania, where they think they're like a god and they can do anything, and they become euphoric and super confident. It's just total positive distortions, and they do crazy psychotic things, and they often get thrown and get arrested or involuntarily hospitalized. One of my first psychiatric patients was at Highland Hospital. On the psychiatric unit was a man who was bipolar, and he was in leather restraints being fed intravenously, because sometimes if they're not, they'll die of dehydration. And he was a wonderful fellow, but he went into a mania, and he was an electronic engineer, and a plane crashed in Alaska, and he started having the idea that it was his fault. And he was having visual images of these things and telling himself that he had caused this terrible crash. And I'll never forget him, because I liked him the moment I looked at him on the gurney, and he was in leather restraints, and I think he picked up a softness or a connection, and he made like a total recovery. But the patient with mania might go down, drive the car 100 miles an hour on the freeway, or they don't need sleep at night, they get hypersexual, just spend money. It's just, hypomania is just like maybe a milder version where you're just feeling unusually happy. And whether that's an illness or just normal happiness, it's kind of a...
Are you feeling just happy, or are you also a little agitated? And
well, no, you don't have to be agitated. You could be, but just kind of happy and tremendous energy, tremendous ambition, working constantly, needing less sleep, just a kind of like a super coffee high or something like that.
So you asked him to be specific with the something that he said and she said.
Yeah.
And so she would say to him, "You started to be a father when you decided to divorce me," referring to the fact that I'm applying for joint custody. And I answered, "I was there to take care of the kids all those years, and now that I've decided to divorce you, I want to keep my fair share of the time with the kids."
Right. And I'll make a quick comment on that, and then you can read the second example, and then we'll role play how you'd use the 5 secrets. But do you notice that he's giving an example where he's blaming her? You see, he's saying he thinks she made this irrational criticism of him, and then he's defending himself. And that's the cause of all marital conflict, pretty much, or human conflict, is that when someone criticizes you, you don't see the truth in it, you argue and get defensive. And that's an easy comment of hers to disarm, and we'll show how to do that, but show his second example as well.
Okay. She said to me, I'm not a good I'm not a good spouse. And
She said to him,
she
"You're
said
not a good."
you're not a good spouse.
And then he said,
I took care of you during all the years, and at times I had to reduce my workload in order to be available to you and the kids.
yeah. So notice once again, he's arguing with her and defending himself, and that's the cause of virtual 90% of human conflict. Not only the cause of marital trouble, but the cause of world trouble between people, between nations, between religious groups. Accusations followed by defensiveness. Now, I don't mean to be too critical on this fellow who wrote this. I appreciate his email. I appreciate his kind comments about the podcast. But this is a universal problem. And let's role play how to use the five secrets, especially the disarming technique, which is finding truth in what the person said, thought empathy, summarizing their words, feeling empathy, acknowledging their feelings, I feel statements, that's sharing your own feelings, stroking, conveying love even when you're angry with someone, conveying respect, and then finishing with inquiry. Now, do you want to be the wife or the husband? Let's say you only started to be a father, now that
Maybe I'll be the husband.
You want to be the husband?
Yeah.
Yeah, and I'll be the wife.
Yeah, because I can already think of a question I want to ask you when I'm done.
Okay, good. You've started to be a father just because you're leaving and you're trying to get custody of the children.
Well, you're right. I asked for a divorce, and I want to make sure that I have custody of the kids. You're really right about that. And, you just are throwing out a lot of accusations at me, and I'm imagining that you're feeling pretty angry that I'm asking for this divorce, and you're probably confused about having to share the kids with me. And, you're used to being a mother pretty much full time, and it's going to take a long time for you to get used to not having the kids around you. So I'm imagining you're feeling really angry at me the more I think about it. And I'm feeling angry too. And I'm also feeling kind of self-righteous, like, why can't I be as good a father as you are as a mother? And, but we still have to be co-parents in the future when we separate. And I want to do a good job raising the kids with you afterwards. So tell me what it's like for you that I'm asking for joint custody.
Well, you want some feedback?
Yeah, I'm feeling kind of angry and self-righteous as I'm saying that.
Well, it's easy to get that
Yeah.
way, and I thought you did a great job of sharing your feelings openly and asking for her to express her feelings. But on the negative side, it probably could be a little warmer and a little bit more disarming and a little less defiant.
That's so interesting because the moment I felt in the role of him, I did feel defiant.
Yeah, exactly. But what does defensiveness and defiance create from a Buddhist perspective?
Hostility and
Yeah, you're forcing warfare.
yeah, I'm forcing
And
warfare.
if people want to force warfare, you can go for it.
Yeah.
But if people want help, and most don't, by the way.
Right.
But if you want help, you can go further in the direction of five secrets.
Even in the role play, I didn't really want help.
Yeah.
But my question to you is,
you want to do a role reversal?
Yeah, but can I ask you this question first?
No.
So I could see disarming you started to be a father when you decided to divorce by saying, you're right about that. I do want to make sure that I'm a father after our divorce is over.
Yeah, that sounded defiant.
Oh, that sounded defiant?
Yeah, hard.
Okay.
Hard and defiant and staking out your territory. And again, people can do that. A lot of people politically do that, and we see them on the news all the time arguing and defending themselves.
Okay, but here's the question. Sometimes the disarm includes thought empathy where I'm repeating back what the person says.
Yeah, sure.
So then in the five secrets, if my disarm includes the thought empathy or repeating back what they said, how would I do another thought empathy?
You wouldn't have to.
I wouldn't have to, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, let's do a role reversal.
Okay, go ahead.
You only started to be a father when you decided to divorce me.
It's painful to hear you say that, and I feel a little ashamed, and I have to agree with you that I failed you as a husband, and in some ways I haven't been the best father at times as well, and I can imagine how hurt you're feeling. The divorce is painful for me as well, and although I can see you're probably really angry with me, and I have to admit I get angry with you too. I have always loved you and cared for you, and I would like to hear more about how you've been experiencing this, and more about things I've done or said that have hurt your feelings and that have been really, really painful for you.
I would give that an A- because you didn't stroke her. And
I didn't. I said I loved you. I've always loved you.
Oh,
That wasn't good enough.
Is that a stroke? I've always loved you. I guess so.
Well, that's
But is
I'll
that
accept that criticism. What would be an even
is that
better stroke?
is
Yeah.
that because we're getting a divorce for you? So for you to say that, I'm thinking, no, you well, really? Then why are we getting a divorce?
Yeah. So you're right. So let's do a more beautiful stroke.
Well, I appreciate something about I appreciate that you're a really great mother.
Yeah, I appreciate that you're a great mother, and I'm kind of mad at myself for having failed you as a husband. And even though we're at loggerheads with each other, I want you to know I still respect you and care about you deeply, and always will. Is that better?
That's really good. Yeah. That's
Okay.
good.
Yeah.
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 But I can
So
also imagine if people could speak like that with each other, they might not be getting a divorce.
that's yes and no. I worked with someone recently at the dim sum after the hike, and I treated someone for a marital conflict, and she's thinking maybe of you know maybe some. Well, I don't want to betray any confidence, but there's some idea of separation and also very poor communication. And what I told this person is that whether you stay with your spouse or get divorced, the five secrets are going to help you tremendously. And you shouldn't think of the five secrets as automatically creating love. Sometimes the romance is gone, the sex appeal is gone, the desire to live with this person is no longer there. But you can still communicate with that person beautifully and honor them. And that because you can't get out of a relationship, it's impossible. You'll be in that relationship forever, even if you get divorced.
Especially if you have kids.
Yeah, yeah, uh-huh. Even if you don't have kids, because you're even going to be thinking about that person in a hateful way, uh, or you're going to have a peaceful relationship, and it's a decision that everyone has to make. But you're also right, Rhonda, that uh, using the five secrets is a key to loving relationships, and even in dating, it can be such a fantastic way to develop closer relationships with people right away than thinking you have to impress them.
And we were talking about positive distortions, and I can really hear a positive distortion in this, especially when I did it incorrectly, and when what he's saying to her, like I deserve to hate her, or
Yeah,
I deserve
yeah,
to be in this fight.
yeah. And he's saying, I'm superior and you're impaired because you have bipolar illness. You're to blame. I'm innocent. Do you see? And again, I wouldn't try to persuade him to change, uh, because that always fails. But if he wanted to change, then I have powerful tools. A fellow wrote me just the other day saying he hated his brother and that he had to confront his brother and kind of punish his brother to protect himself. And he was also very defiant, like this fellow. And it says, how are you going to use the five secrets, when you've got a brother who's genuinely terrible and mean? And he's trying to kind of hook me into an argument. And then I wrote back with admiration and sitting with open hands and said, gosh, it doesn't sound to me like this is something you need help with, and that you have something with your brother that's working for you.
Yeah, for sure.
And so peaceful for me not to have to try to persuade this angry person. Lo and behold, he wrote back the most beautiful emails. And, wow, you should be a therapist. This is fantastic. I think I saw myself now as hating my brother and thinking, why am I hating my brother? And maybe I should try to develop a more loving relationship. It was just so fantastic. But I was just sitting with open hands, which is a topic for another day. So we should probably
let's ask the next
ahead.
question. Let's ask the next Ask David, which is also a relationship issue. But one other thing that you just did is you didn't go in order 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You didn't start with the disarm. You started with a really beautiful I feel statement.
Oops, my pen just dropped.
And I think that, I think that's giving people freedom and permission to be creative with the 5 secrets.
With all the things that we're teaching have to come from the heart and they have to be spontaneous. And it's hard to teach therapists, it's hard to teach the general public because everyone's looking for rules to follow, formulas. And formulas have very, very limited value because they sound formulaic. And Jeremy, who is, we've had on the podcast, I'm working with him on the app, Jeremy Carmel, that's joined the Tuesday group, and he says it's so interesting how some of the people in the group come from the heart when they're practicing team therapy techniques, sound very genuine, and others sound like they're trying to follow rules, and it has a stiff quality. And I thought that was really a tremendously accurate observation. Mm-hmm. And hopefully, once you learn the rules, you can relax and be human. It's a human connection in therapy. It's not just being a technician and following clever techniques. Deep healing requires a human connection, even if you're doing a super high-tech form of therapy like team.
Cool. Well, that's a good segue into the next Ask David. And the next one is also about relationships, and we're titling it, How Do You Treat an Existential Crisis? Good afternoon, Dr. Burns. Have you ever treated anyone that went through an existential crisis, and were you successful? I have a wife dealing with depression, and I was in the past able to help her, even though my mindset was, life is awesome. So why or how do you have to be so upset about it? I have also dealt with my own anxiety, and I was able to get myself out of that 10 years ago using exposure techniques. But I have run into a bit of a wall here with what I believe is an existential crisis. I have noticed that I am unable to find anything of that subject in any of your topics. Thank you for your time, Dr. Burns. Arturo.
Well, actually, I think we did have a podcast on existential crisis, the teenage girl who wanted to know who she was. And I probably won't, tell that story again. You can go to my website and type in identity crisis in the search bar, and it'll pop right up. But the bottom line is that there's no such thing as an existential crisis.
Well, I'd ask him to be specific, like you had started with the previous writer. Like, what exactly does he mean by existential crisis?
Yeah. And then once you solve the specific problem that you're having, then the so-called existential crisis goes away. Existential crisis is just a way of saying I'm upset about something. Should we comment on his interaction with his wife?
Yeah, why don't we?
What seems to be going on here is that his wife is depressed, and I don't know if he thinks she's got an existential crisis or he's got an existential crisis and not knowing how to deal with her. But the bottom line is to say to someone who's depressed, life is awesome, and why be upset? It's like that cheerleading that never works and always irritates people who are depressed. And what people who are depressed are, and I know you've got a crisis, I won't mention it in your life right now, but a real unpleasant thing that you're having to deal with that you don't deserve.
Thanks.
But you don't need like any advice or anything. You just need a little warmth and a little listening and a little acceptance. And I care about you, and I'm sorry you're having to confront this.
Right, but if you said, "Oh, you'll get over it,"
exactly.
I'd be really irritated. Honestly, I would be irritated.
Yeah. So again, this fellow needs to use the 5 secrets. Maybe read my book, Feeling Good Together. Do the written exercises. You can't get it just by reading and thinking about it. Maybe practice with someone and learn to listen, to do thought empathy and feeling empathy and disarming and just share your feelings and stop trying to help the other person, because it just irritates people who are depressed. If someone's asking for help, you can ask them what they want help with, and maybe you can help them in some way. But 90% of the time, people just want someone to love them and care about them and
listen to them.
Huh?
And listen to them.
They listen, but people don't know what listening means. It's just a word we use. We have a very precise meaning in the 5 secrets of effective communication. Means finding truth in what the person said, acknowledging the person's feelings, asking for more information, letting them know that you feel sad and that you feel concerned about them, you love them, that you care about them, without trying to help. Well, I can say that a lot of times. People don't get the message very quickly.
It's a really hard habit to break.
It is. All the habits are break. The 5 secrets of effective communication are incredibly difficult. We had, even on the hike on Sunday, we were working with someone who needs I feel statements. And because she's not sharing her feelings, she gets some feelings of anxiety and panic. And it was incredibly difficult for her to be able to say to a loved one, I'm feeling kind of hurt and angry. Mm-hmm. It just seems so simple, and yet it's people have tremendous resistance to each of the 5 secrets of effective communication. Even highly skilled, highly trained mental health professionals. It's mind-boggling to me how hard it is for humans to communicate in a loving, effective way. And motivation has a lot to do with it too. I mean, it's not just learning techniques. It's, do you want to open your heart?
Do you want to find truth in what they said?
Yeah, and do you want to develop a more loving, closer relationship? And sadly, although it's easy to say, oh yes, I want that, when push comes to shove, an awful lot of people really don't want that. They want to blame, they want to feel superior, they want to argue. It's kind of on a downer, but Rhonda will now conclude our podcast with an incredibly bright and enlightening message. Rhonda?
Well, I think most people are motivated to have really good relationships. People want to have a companion that they love, and they want to resolve issues. And so even though the 5 secrets are difficult to learn, they're worth it.
Oh yeah, it's been a game changer for me, but I really had to want to do it, and I had to get fed up with my own ways of communicating with people who were critical of me, and when there was conflict, and I saw that I wasn't doing nearly as well as I could or might or wanted to. And I saw colleagues, students who had beautiful interpersonal skills, far better than my own, and I said, I want that, and so I really worked on it.
Great. Okay, well, thank you so much, everyone, for listening, and until next time.
Thank you.
Thank you, David. This has been another episode of the Feeling Good podcast. For more information, visit Dr. Burns' website at feelinggood.com, where you will find the show notes for this episode under the podcast page. You will also find archives of previous episodes and many resources for therapists and non-therapists. We welcome your comments and questions. If you want to support the show, please share the podcast with people who might benefit from it. You could also go to iTunes and leave a 5-star rating. The theme music is Gypsy Jazz in Paris, 1935, composed and performed by Brett Van Donsel. I am your host, Rhonda Borowski. We hope you enjoyed this episode. I invite you to join us next time for another episode of the Feeling Good podcast.